بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع لذنوبنا وتبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost for giving us the opportunity to commemorate a wonderful personality, the likes of Ummul Baneen al-Arba'a, alayha salam, who even though she was not considered to be amongst the ma'asumeen, you find that as Shi'as of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam and the following A'immat al-Athar, we dedicate a night out of the year to remember such a personality. When you refer back to the Holy Quran, you realize that the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they came towards their nations and their respected people, they invited them towards the concept of Tawheed. They invited them to believe in one God. They invited them to believe that they were the messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But majority of the times, you found that the people would stand against, in opposition towards these prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At times they were threatened by the message of the prophets and the messengers, upon which they would come forward and they would say, what is it that you want in return? We will give you the wealth. We will give you, for example, your desires will be met. Whatever it is that you want, tell us and we will supply it to you. And most of the times, in fact, every single time, the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reply, would say in return that we expect nothing in return, because the ajr, the reward of our actions, is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, when you come towards the life history of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, when he came towards his people and he invited his people towards Islam and he saw Islam grow, you found that they came towards the Prophet of Islam and they would say to him, what is it that you want in return for your propagation of the religion of Islam? And the Prophet would reply, as it is mentioned in the Quran, لا أسألكم عليه أجر. I do not ask you for any reward. إلا المودة في القربى. Except that you have love for my family. Except for the holy household. Love which is directed towards the holy household. This is what the Holy Prophet of Islam asked in return. But you find naturally after his demise, majority of the Muslim Ummah, they did not show this love towards the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Love here is the implication that one should take the Ahlul Bayt as a master, as a guide, as a successor of the Holy Prophet of Islam. And even broader than that, further than this, is to just show love towards the members of the household, to befriend them, to take them as guides, but to also take them as friends as well. So naturally you found that after the Prophet's demise, you found that the Muslim Ummah practically turned away from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. In fact, a handful of people were those who stuck by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. In history we have countless examples of how a prophet would have a handful of followers, whereas the majority would turn their backs in defiance against the prophets of Islam. Likewise, the same transpired after the Prophet's demise. sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. From amongst them was Ummul Baneen and her tribe. Now Ummul Baneen, her name, formal name, was Fatima bint al-Huzam al-Kilabiyya. She came from a tribe, the Kilabiyya, who had love for Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And they were those who had taken the Imam alayhi salam as their Imam, the Imam of that time. So they weren't those who followed the majority, but they were from amongst the minorities who followed, who were considered to be the Shias of Ali alayhi salam. Now, if you want to understand the fadila of Ummul Baneen, we remind ourselves every year when we speak about her history and her maqam in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we often refer back to what the ulama have said with regards to her. And one of the things that the ulama have constantly repeated over and over again, and from amongst them the highest of our fuqaha and maraja, is that she is a woman who we ought to turn to her and we should use her as a wasila to seek proximity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She is the mother of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Abu Fadl al-Abbas, as explained to us by the Ahl al-Bayt, is Bab al-Hawa'ij. He is the door of having our needs met, of having our du'as answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then what of the mother of Abu Fadl al-Abbas? That's why the scholars came forward and they say, and they continue to say this, that she is one of the doors of having our needs and our du'as answered. If we were to approach Allah through her, then most definitely you and I can see our du'as being answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I don't say this. If you refer to, for example, the words of Sayyid al-Khu'i, rahmatullah alayh, Marj' al-Din, Faqih al-Azim, Sayyid al-Khu'i, he would say constantly to his students, he would say, if you have a need, if you have a haja, then in order for you to meet your haja, stand up one night, in the middle of the night, for tahajjud, for salat al-layl, and dedicate the thawab of that salah for Ummul Baneen. Use her as a wasila to have your du'as answered. Because this act in itself is something which is mujarrab, it's tested. The majority of these ulama and fuqaha and maraja, when they advise, they take these advices that they give us from their teachers, and their teachers took it from their teachers. And it's a chain that goes back many, many centuries. He would say to his student, Sayyid al-Khu'i rahmatullah alayhi, that this particular action is mujarrab. It has been tested to work. So you found the likes of Sayyid al-Khu'i rahmatullah alayhi, he would say, recite Salat al-Layl and donate its thawab to Ummul Baneen. You had, for example, the likes of Ayatollah Muhyiddin al-Mamaqani. He had a different amal or amal for us. He would say that if you want your hajats to be answered by Allah, then recite Khatmul Quran, recite the entire Quran for Ummul Baneen alayha salam. Make sure that you donate the thawab of Khatmul Quran for Ummul Baneen. Now you could recite the whole 30 siparas yourself, for example, or you can break it up. You can get 30 mu'mineen and you can give each one, you can allocate each sipara to each of the mu'mineen. But its thawab should be given to Ummul Baneen. And through her, seek your hajats from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this again is something which has been tried and it's tested, it's mujarrab, it's known to work. You have, for example, the likes of Abdullah al-A'la al-Sabzawari, Abdullah al-Sabzawari, marhum, Ayatollah al-Udhma of his time, who is of course buried in Najaf, not too far from the haram of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. In fact, they have a whole masjid, he has a whole masjid of his own, Masjid al-Sabzawari, it's very well known in Najaf. They say that he would tell his students and his family members what to do. He would say that if you have a hajat and you want to fulfill this hajat, you want it to be answered by Allah, then organize Aza, Majlis al-Aza of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam and donate its reward for Ummul Baneen alayhi salam. Make sure that you give every aspect of its thawab to Ummul Baneen. Because again, this is known to work, this is known to be tested amongst the ulama. Sayyid Abdullah al-Sabzawari, one of the beautiful things was that he had knowledge of Alim al-Barzakh. He had knowledge of the world of the unseen, a fraction of the knowledge of the unseen. They say, you see, many people question this. How is it possible for the ulama to have knowledge of the hereafter, of the world of the barzakh, for example? We recite, and we've read many of these, for example, narrations in different books and whatnot. Many people question this. How is it that normal individuals can have knowledge of alim al-barzakh? You see, knowledge, one of the ways that we gain knowledge is through our senses, either by reading or by hearing others, or by feeling and sensing things. This is how we gain knowledge. At times we gain knowledge by using our aql, when we use logic, for example. But sometimes we gain knowledge through ilham. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals onto that person. Inspiration is given to normal individuals as well. It's not something that is exclusive to the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as far as the heart is purified, when you and I work to purify our hearts, you find that our hearts become recipient to the inspirations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The devils and the shayateen, they do not come close to us. But the inspirations which are divine, sourced from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can be given to us and we can be a source, and we can develop, and we can gain knowledge that cannot be gained from other avenues. So you find that Sayyid Abdullah Ala as-Sabzawari, he was one of these personalities who had knowledge of alim al-barzakh. Yet he would come forward and he would say that one of the best ways for you to seek your hajats to be answered is through Ummul Baneen. And he was, of course, of this opinion. Then you had other ulama who would come forward and say that if you want your hajats to be accepted by Ummul Baneen, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, use the wasila of Ummul Baneen. How? By preparing a sufra, niyaz. Donate a niyaz, the thawab of that niyaz, to Ummul Baneen, salamullahi alayha, and you will most definitely see your hajats being answered. You know, many Thursday nights, Jumerat for example, we donate, we sponsor a majlis, we sponsor niyaz, tabarruk, for our marhumeen. Many a times it's always for our marhumeen, and there's nothing wrong in that. May Allah bless you and bless your marhumeen as well. But the ulama come forward and say that at times donate the thawab of these majalis either to the members of the Ahlul Bayt or to the Imam of our time, but also other personalities who do not belong from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, the likeness of Ummul Baneen. And it's so surprising to see that this is a normal woman who has reached and who has elevated to a maqam so grand, so powerful, that she is never forgotten in the hearts of the Shia. She is never forgotten in the hearts of the followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So some of you may ask the question, what did she do in her life that she was known to have such a maqam? Not in our eyes, in the eyes of the ulama and the highest of the fuqaha. You know, some individuals, unfortunately, it hurts me to see that in this day and age there are many who come forward and question the whole concept of tawassul. They don't believe in seeking tawassul from Abi Abdullah alayhi salam, let alone Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, let alone Ummul Baneen. They say tawassul is as equivalent to shirk. My response is simple. My response is, I take my religion from those who have studied, from those who have dedicated their entire lives studying the religion of Islam. If someone like Sayyid Abdullah Ala as-Sabzawari, if someone like, for example, Sayyid al-Khoi rahmatullah alayh, were to tell me to always refer to Ummul Baneen when I am in need, then I take their words for granted. Because these are individuals who have dedicated their entire lives learning about the religion of Islam. I'm not going to listen to someone who spent literally a handful of years in the Hawza thinking he's just found and unlocked the secrets of Tashayyu', of Shia Islam, and that tawassul is a fabrication and it's as equivalent to shirk. I listen to those who have spent their entire years serving the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, not those who have spent 3, 4, 5 years in the Hawza. What has Ummul Baneen done in her life for her to be known in this particular way, 1400 years later even? In order to understand the maqam of Ummul Baneen, we take a very simple route, and that is understanding the maqam of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Whenever we speak about Abbas alayhi salam, we speak about how great of a personality he was, his bravery, his, for example, loyalty to the Imam alayhi salam, his spirituality. Every night in Muharram, for example, one night is dedicated towards him. What a great maqam he has in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But despite that, we have to understand that despite how great Abbas is, he is always subservient to his mother, Ummul Baneen. Abbas is Abbas because of Ummul Baneen. When we want to understand Ummul Baneen, let us understand Abbas alayhi salam. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, mentions in the ziyarah of Abu Fadl al-Abbas, addressing his uncle Abbas, he says, Ashhadu laka taslim, Ashhadu laka bit-taslimi wat-tasdiq wal-wafa'i wal-nasiha. Ya Abbas, you number one were a personality who had taslim, number one, and you had tasdeeq, and then you were a man of loyalty, wal-wafa'. You had absolute loyalty towards Abi Abdullah alayhi salam, wal-nasiha. And all of this was done with absolute sincerity. Abbas alayhi salam was the one who was number one loyal. And he was absolutely in submission towards Imam Husayn alayhi salam. And he had sincerity supporting the Imam alayhi salam. This was given to him, this was nurtured to him by Ummul Baneen alayhi salam. Ummul Baneen, the way she raised Abbas and her three other sons, was to just purely be subservient towards the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. You look at the example of submission in the life of Abbas alayhi salam. Where is it seen? It peaked when he enters the river. When he enters the river, remember, he hasn't drunk water for 3 days, 3 nights. No food has entered his mouth. He enters the water, the cool water. He lifts the water with his hands. He's about to drink from it. What does he do then? He throws it away. He says, how dare you? Speaking to himself, he says, how dare you drink from this water when your master, Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, is waiting for his turn to drink from the water? How dare you put yourself forward before Imam alayhi salam? The priority should always be given to the Imam alayhi salam. He throws the water away, he refills his mushk, and then he goes back towards the camps of Abi Abdullah. And the story we all know of. You find that Abu Fadl al-Abbas shows subservience and he shows absolute submission when he prioritizes the needs of the Imam of the time before his own needs. This was the peak of submission. I say to you, and the ulama have said this as well, Wallah, if Abbas had drunk from that water, it wouldn't have been haram for him. He wouldn't have sinned against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Imam of his time. Allah would have not held him accountable for his actions. That was him and him alone. When he throws away the water, it was him crushing his own desires. This is the manifestation of absolute taslim, submission towards the Imam and towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why he was known as a great personality. Some of you may ask, taslim, submission to Allah, is what elevates me towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is what makes me have a close proximity towards Allah. How do I establish taslim in my life? Taslim is when I prioritize Allah first and foremost in my life. You and I, each and every one of us in our lives, there is a battle, there is a war that takes place within us. My desires on the one hand pushes me towards one direction. My emotions pushes me towards a different direction. And this has an outcome in how I speak with others, in what I say, which words I use, and how I behave in front of others. My imagination, by hearing certain things, by seeing certain things, by smelling even certain things, has the ability to control my actions many a times. But then sometimes you find that there are certain individuals who always use their intellect and their aql to guide them in their lives. Such individuals are those who have submitted totally towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My desires, my imagination, my emotions will push me towards one direction, but my aql will try and guide me towards that which is pure and that which is truthful. And so we need to realize and understand that when we speak about taslim and submission, it's when a human being uses his aql to guide him in his life. Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam uses the aql. He doesn't let his desires and his emotions and his imagination behave or allow him or dictate his actions. Rather, he uses his intellect. Likewise, we need to use our intellects many a times. One of the best examples, simplest examples at the least, is salah, prayers. We speak about the fadil of reciting prayers fi awwal waqt, in the time, in its most significant time. It's when we have just entered the time of salah. Yes, the lawmaker, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us flexibility. I can recite salah within a time frame, in the beginning or towards the end. But when it is recited in the very beginning, fi awwal waqt, you find that the salah carries much more emphasis. It is much more weightier in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My aql tells me that there is fadila, that there is an excellence in reciting salah fi awwal waqt. But at the same time, my desires may say something else. My imagination will say something else. My emotions will say something else. Sometimes I'll come up with 1,000 excuses not to pray on time and to delay my salah. Sometimes I'll say that I have something to finish off before I can stand for prayers. Sometimes I'll say to myself, I'm not feeling too well. I'm not feeling in the mood to recite salah. I'll delay my salah until some other time. You find that the lawmakers as well as the ulama come forward and they say that there is a specific fadila when you and I recite salah fi awwal waqt. And this is something that we should prioritize within our lives. You find that an individual who always prays on time, he realizes and he prioritizes, number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his life. That is why these individuals are somewhat successful in their lives. Because priority is, number one, given to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rather than what they want or what they feel deep inside. When you then come forward towards, for example, the life of Ummul Baneen, how was she submissive? How did she develop submission towards the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? It was from the very beginning. It was when she was proposed by Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Submission was identified from a very young age, from the earlier stages of her life, especially during the time of her marriage and her proposal towards Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. They say the Imam alayhi salam, he approaches Aqil. He says to his brother Aqil, Ya Aqil, find me a woman who comes from a noble tribe of warriors. I wish to marry someone from such a tribe. Aqil, they say he had knowledge of the ancestors of the Arabs. And immediately he says to the Imam alayhi salam, he says that there is a woman by the name of Fatima from the tribe of Kilabiyya, the daughter of Husayn. Their tribe is a tribe of great warriors and brave men. The Imam alayhi salam then tells Aqil, he says, Ya Aqil, go towards their tribe. Now their tribe was located just outside Medina. Aqil goes on behalf of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam to propose the hand of Fatima bint Huzam al-Kilabiyya. When he comes towards the tribe, he meets with Fatima's father, Ummul Baneen's father. Now Ummul Baneen's father, they say many years before, he had a dream, and he saw in this dream, he saw himself playing with a jewel, a very expensive gem. And as he was playing with this gem, a man came towards him on a horse. And he sees this particular gem. And he says to him, O Huzam, I'm willing to buy that from you. How much are you willing to sell it for? Huzam, as he's playing with this gem, this jewel, he looks at the man the horse rider, and he says, in reality, to be very honest, I don't know how much this gem is worth. So I wouldn't be able to give you the price for it. The horse rider, he says to Huzam, Huzam, give me the gem, and in return I'll give you honor. And I'll give you a great name for yourself. And then he wakes up from this dream. When he inquires as to the meaning of this dream, they say to him that one of the interpretations is that you will be given a great lineage. That this man who came to you in your dream and he took the gem from you in return for honor, it means that you will have a great lineage. So when Aqil came towards him, Aqil met Huzam. They exchanged greetings, and of course Huzam knew who Aqil was, the brother of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Huzam was a Shia of the Imam alayhi salam, so he was very honored to meet with the brother of the Imam alayhi salam. So he says to Aqil, he says, Ya Aqil, you've honored me with your presence. What can I do for you? Upon which Aqil responds, he says, I have come to seek your daughter's hand in marriage, and I am representing my brother Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Meaning what? Meaning that my brother wishes to marry your daughter Fatima. They say that Huzam, he was of course shocked. He was of course very happy to hear such a proposal, that my master wishes my daughter's hand in marriage. He was very much elated by such a news. But then he turns to Aqil, he says, Ya Aqil, listen, as happy as I would be to give my daughter's hand in marriage, you have to understand that perhaps, the expectations of Amir al-Mu'mineen is very high, or they may be very high. My daughter may not be able to meet with these expectations. Upon which Aqil replies, he says to him, he says, Huzam, listen, if my brother saw that this was not a good idea, I wouldn't be standing here with you, asking for your daughter's hand in marriage. My brother knows what he's doing. And so Huzam agrees, and he says, well, if that's the case, then I have to go back and speak with my wife, and then of course I have to seek permission from my daughter. And then he goes and he returns to his home. Now a question is raised. Why is it that the Imam alayhi salam asks Aqil to find a woman for him to wed? Amir al-Mu'mineen is what? Madinatun ilm. Wa aliyun babuha. The Prophet is the city of knowledge, but Ali is the gate. So why does the Imam alayhi salam ask Aqil to refer a woman or to give name of a woman from a noble tribe, a tribe of warriors? The reason why is, of course, the Imam alayhi salam knows. He doesn't need his brother to advise him which woman to marry. The Imam has this knowledge. The Imam is someone who is connected with Alim al-Malakut. He doesn't need Aqil's advice. But the Imam alayhi salam is teaching us that you and I, as ordinary people, for us to seek knowledge, we need to use certain avenues in order to make sure that we make the correct decisions in our lives. Especially when it comes to life-changing decisions such as marriage, when it comes to areas of marriage, when it comes to areas of where we're making the most significant decisions in our lives, we should, number one, first and foremost, refer to professionals in the field. We should constantly refer to those who are specialized in their specific fields. Number two, to consult and to engage in consultation. The Prophet of Islam, being the city of knowledge, used to consult with his companions as well. The Imams used to consult with their companions, so that you and I follow their sunnah. That if I want to, for example, go to a university, if I, for example, want to change careers, if I want to migrate to a different country, if I want to invest in a particular stock, for example, I consult with people. I make sure that I do my research, especially in areas of marriage. That if I wish to marry a woman, if I wish to marry, for example, a woman wishes to marry a man, they should consult those who are specialized in the field. There is a particular person you're interested in, consult with the friends of this person as to who he is or who she is, what personality she has, how is her level of religiosity, do they have things in common, do they have certain issues that people are not aware of? Try and find out these informations to make sure that the person you're proposing to is the correct person for you to wed and for you to share the rest of your life with. Consultation is common sense, it's logical, and it's something that is advocated by the religion of Islam. Islam advocates the fact that you should consult in your lives, especially when it comes to serious matters that affects your life and the lives of others around you. And thirdly, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam refers to Aqil to highlight the fadila, the excellences of Ummul Baneen. So now Aqil, when he comes back to his home, they say that as he enters his home, Ummul Baneen is sitting alongside her mother. This is beautiful. Ummul Baneen is sitting alongside her mother. She says to her mother, she says, my mother, last night I had a dream. And I saw myself sitting in a very beautiful garden. And I was sitting in this garden and I looked up towards the skies and I saw the moon, the full moon. And then I saw these beautiful, illustrious stars. All of a sudden, the moon jumped. The moon jumped from its position and it fell on my lap. And then after the moon, a star fell on my lap. And then a second star fell on my lap. And a third star fell on my lap. When she heard this dream, when the mother heard this dream, she says to her, Fatima, I think the interpretation of this dream is that you will wed a very noble man, an honorable person, and from him you will be given 4 children, the first of whom will be as beautiful as the full moon. Look at the relationship between Ummul Baneen and her mother. That she was able to sit with her and she was able to open up to her, share even the most intimate parts of her life with her mother, to seek guidance and consultation from her mother. This was the relationship between Ummul Baneen and her mother. It shows how profound her mother played a life in the role of the upbringing of Ummul Baneen. That she was active in the tarbiyah of Ummul Baneen, which then Ummul Baneen demonstrates when she raises her 4 sons. When you refer to the Holy Quran, you realize that the Quran speaks about sons, a lineage from very 2 contrasting areas or perspectives. The Quran says in one ayah, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا أَمْوَالَكُمْ وَأَوْلَادَكُمْ فِتْنَةً, that your wealth and your sons and your lineages can either be a fitna for you, or they can be what? Al-malu wal-banun zinat al-hayat al-dunya. Or your sons can be, your lineage can be a beautification and an adornment for your life. Our sons and our daughters, our lineages can either be a fitna or it can be an adornment for our lives. This is our, how they turn out is within our control, is within our hands. And it revolves on how we nurture them and how we raise them and how we actively engage in their tarbiyah. The more we are part and parcel of the lives of our children, they can most definitely be an adornment of our life. But if we care about our children and not care about their up, then later they will be a fitna for us in our lives. And then regret, intense regret in our lives. They say that this interpretation was then delivered to her from her mother. When the father, Husayn, heard this interpretation of her mother, that one day you'll marry an honorable man, he walks into the room and he says that something beautiful has just happened. Referring to his wife, speaking to his wife, he says to her, he says that it's beautiful and it's a coincidence that you've just said what you've said, because I've just come from meeting Aqil, the brother of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And it seems that the Imam of our time, Amir al-Mu'mineen, wishes to marry our daughter. The mother, when she hears this news, she is of course extremely happy that she is able to serve the Imam of her time by giving her daughter's hand in marriage. But then her father, Husayn, says to his wife, he says, I have a concern though. And my concern is that maybe perhaps Fatima will not live to the expectations of the Imam alayhi salam. That Fatima, the Imam, obviously being the representative of Rasulullah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has certain levels of expectations. And perhaps our daughter Fatima will not meet those expectations. Ummul Baneen's mother to her husband, she says, Husayn, you don't know the way. Fatima, I have raised her, and I can tell you for a fact that she is ready for this marriage. Aqil, he's convinced that this marriage is the right thing to do. Husayn, he feels that this marriage is the right thing to do, so he approaches Aqil. Aqil then says to him, what is the dowry that you ask for? And Husayn, he says to Aqil, he says, my daughter's marriage to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, I'll give my daughter as a gift, as in, we don't want a dowry in return. Aqil responds, he says, we'll stick to the sunnah of Rasulullah and we will give 500 dirhams, 500 simple coins as the dowry. The proposal is accepted. Fatima accepts to marry Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And this is how she enters the lives of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Now, a beautiful fact here is that there are certain historians who have examined that Fatima bint al-Huzam al-Kilabiyya, when she married Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, she was literally the same age as Zaynab al-Kubra. And she was contemporaneous in terms of their age. She was very similar to the ages of Imam Hassan alayhi salam as well as Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. Historians say that she was born 5 years after Hijrah. And this was the same time when the members of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam were born. So they say that because she was the same age as Zaynab and Imam al-Hassan as well as Imam al-Husayn alayhim salam, that when she enters the house of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, she doesn't enter as an authority. And this is something also very beautiful. She enters she enters the house of the Ahlul Bayt with absolute submission and humility. That these individuals, Zaynab as well as Imam al-Hasanain, Al-Imamain al-Hasanain, they are my masters and I am their servant. This was the mentality and the behavior that she upheld when she entered the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. When she enters the household of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, she doesn't enter with the demeanor that I am now the wife of your father, therefore I demand authority and I demand respect. As in, think about the scenario here. In today's, and I try and apply that in contemporary times. Imagine there is a father who has children. The mother of these children has passed away. The father has married a different woman, and this woman lives in the same house as the children. In today's time, in the 21st century, this woman who's now married the father would demand respect, would demand authority from the children, regardless of age. We've seen this before many a times. When the father passes away, the woman will fight. The new wife will fight, armed to the teeth, to make sure that she is given her share of the inheritance, isn't it? But you find that when Ummul Baneen enters the house of the Ahlul Bayt, enters the house of Imam Ali alayhi salam, she has a completely different demeanor. I am their servant and they are my masters. Even though I have married their father, I am subservient to them first and foremost. When it comes to her relationship with Zaynab, it is a relationship between a servant and a master. Likewise, when it comes to the relationship between her and Imam al-Hassan, as well as Imam al-Husayn alayhim as-salam, it is a relationship between a servant and a master. When she gives birth to Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, from a very young age, she teaches him how to be subservient towards the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, how to be loyal towards the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. That even when the entire world is given to you in your hands, when even then the entire world is proposed to you, you will never abandon the Ahlul Bayt, regardless of how difficult the situation may be. This is what Abu Fadl al-Abbas was taught by his mother, Ummul Baneen. When you find on the 10th night of Muharram, Laylat al-Ashura, Shimr ibn al-Joshan approaches the camp. When he approaches the camp, he says, I'm calling out the children of Ummul Baneen. Abbas, Ja'far, Abdullah, Uthman, come out. You have been given respite. Why? Because there is a relationship between us and your mother Ummul Baneen. Because we are relatives, we wish not to fight you. Abbas responds, he says, woe unto you, O Shimr. You expect us to abandon our master? Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. Imagine the entire empire is against Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. If Abbas and his 4 brothers had walked away, they would have what? They would have been given respite and they would have been given, for example, gifts even then. But you find that Abbas, the loyalty that he was taught by his mother Ummul Baneen, he made sure to stand alongside Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. And even then, from a very young age, he was known to submit and always submit towards Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. All of which was taught by his mother. The famous narration when Imam Ali alayhi salam is in Masjid al-Nabi, and then Imam Hassan as well as Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam approaches him and says, "Oh my father, I'm thirsty." They say Abu Fadl al-Abbas heard the cries of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam that he was thirsty. He runs home. He runs home. He knocks on the door. His mother opens the door. He says, "Oh my mother, Abu Abdullah alayhi salam is thirsty." Abu Abdullah is thirsty, upon which Ummul Baneen, she fills a bucket of water or a glass of water, whatever it is. He gives it to Abbas. She gives it to Abbas. She says, "Oh Abbas, go and deliver this to Abu Abdullah alayhi salam." When he comes running to Abu Abdullah, he gives him the glass of water. Abu Abdullah alayhi salam drinks. Amir al-Mu'mineen sees the loyalty and the submission of Abbas from a very young age towards his brother Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. And then he turns to Abbas, he says, "Oh Abbas, you are the one who will quench the thirst one day." From this narration we see that Abbas was raised in the house of Ummul Baneen to always be loyal and to be subservient towards Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. But she was able to teach him that because she herself, she was loyal towards the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. One of the manifestations of her loyalty was that even after Karbala, she never shed tears for Abu Abdullah. She never shed tears for Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Her tears were reserved exclusively for Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. They say that when Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, when he enters the city of Medina, before entering the city of Medina, he camps outside the city for 3 to 4 days. When he camps outside the city of Medina 3 to 4 days, a man by the name of Bishr ibn Hadlam, he approaches the Imam alayhi salam. And the Imam says to him, Ya Bishr, we knew your father. Your father was a poet and he would recite poetry. Tell me, Ya Bishr, do you also recite poetry like your father? Bishr says, yes. Yabna Rasulullah, I too recite poetry. He says, Ya Bishr, enter the city of Medina and narrate to the people what has happened to us, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Bishr, he enters the city of Medina and he cries out. He says, Ya Ahl al-Yathrib, Ya Ahl Yathrib, la maqama lakum biha. O people of Medina, there is no place for you anymore in this city. Leave the city of Medina. These are very strong words. The people of Medina, they came towards him. They said to him, Ya Bishr, what's happened? In those times, they used to relay bad news through poetry. And hearing these words, such heavy words, they realized that there is bad news to be relayed by Bishr. They say to him, "Oh Bishr, tell us what's happened." Bishr would say, "Go towards Masjid al-Nabi, stand alongside the grave of Rasulullah, there I will tell you what's happened." Bishr says, "I went to as many houses as possible and I kept saying this to the people, Ya Ahl Yathrib, la maqama lakum biha. Go towards the mosque of Rasulullah, where I will relay to you the news of what's happened." They say after a while, all of the people of Medina, they went towards Masjid al-Nabi. They congregated, and it was a large jama'ah. Bishr came forward and he stands on a platform and he begins reciting lines of poetry. He says, Ya Ahl Yathrib, la muqama lakum biha. قتل الحسين وعدمعي مدرار الجسم منه بكربلاء مذرج والرأس منه على القناة يدار. He says, O people of Medina, leave the city of Medina. There's no place for you in it anymore. Oh Bishr, tell us what's happened. He says to them, he says, قُتِلَ الْحُسَيْنُ, Husayn has been killed, has been slaughtered, and my tears will continue to flow for him. This Husayn that we used to go to for help and for knowledge, this Husayn who used to help us in our lives, who used to help us financially within our lives, this Husayn who used to resemble Rasulullah, this Husayn whose akhlaq we used to love and admire, this Husayn who we used to love being in the presence of, has been slaughtered, and he's not coming back towards the city of Medina. He says, وَالْجِسْمُ مِنْهُ بِكَرْبَلَا, and his body has been abandoned in the sands of Karbala, مُذَرَّجٌ, soaked in his own blood. وَالرَّأْسُ مِنْهُ, but his head is no longer with his body. They've separated his head, they've placed it on the spears, and it travels from one city to another. People began to cry and lament. They say there was an old woman in that congregation. This woman, she did not hear the words of Bishr. So she approaches Bishr ibn Hadlab. They say this old woman, there was a young infant in her hands. When she approaches Bishr ibn Hadlab, she says, Ya Bishr, tell me what's happened to my son, Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. Bishr asks, he says, who is this woman? I do not recognize her. They say to him, Ya Bishr, be careful what you say to her, because she is Ummul Baneen. She is the son of those who have been slaughtered in Karbala. Be generous, be empathetic when you speak to her, Ya Bishr. He says to her, he says, O Ummul Baneen, what can I say to you? أعظم الله لك الأجر بولدك عثمان. He says, Ya Ummul Baneen, may Allah reward you for your son Uthman. She says, I have not asked for my son Uthman, Ya Bishr. Tell me what's happened to my son Abi Abdullah. He says, أعظم الله لك الأجر Ya Ummul Baneen, they have killed your son Ja'far, and they've abandoned his body in the sands of Karbala. She says, don't tell me about Ja'far. I've asked you, Ya Bishr, tell me about my son Abi Abdullah. He says, أعظم الله لك الأجر بولدك Abdullah. He says, oh my he says, Ya Ummul Baneen, may Allah reward you for your son Abdullah. She says, do not tell me about Abdullah. Tell me about my son Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. Upon which he says, أعظم الله لك الأجر بمصاب أبي فضل العباس عليه السلام. When she hears the name of Abbas, she drops the infant that's there in her hand. She begins to cry, she begins to lament. She says, Ya Bishr, you've cut my heart into pieces hearing the name of Abbas, how they slaughtered Abbas. My heart has been cut into pieces, but Ya Bishr, I tell you, I say to you, may my 4 sons be sacrificed for Abi Abdullah. Tell me, Ya Bishr, has Abu Abdullah returned towards the city of Medina? He says to her, Ya Ummul Baneen, أعظم الله لك الأجر. They did not leave Abi Abdullah. They too slaughtered him and abandoned his body in the sands of Karbala. Upon which Ummul Baneen, her cries and her lamentations intensifies. They say after hearing about the Masa'ib of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam, she goes towards Jannat al-Baqi and she makes four graves depicting the graves of each of her sons. And then the fifth grave depicting the grave of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. And she would sit there alongside these graves and she would recite lines of poetry. She would say, "Do not call me Ummul Baneen anymore. You remind me of my heroes. I had four sons who were strong and brave, but now I have no sons. They were so great and strong and mighty, but now they are cut into 1,000 pieces, all for the sake of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam." إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the wasila of Ummul Baneen. Ya Allah, forgive our sins. Ya Allah, protect our families and our neighbors and our friends in these uncertain times. Ya Allah, for our marhumeen, dismiss their evil, dismiss their sins, Ya Allah, and magnify their good deeds and raise their stations alongside the stations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.